We are going to talk about parenting, and I like to talk about parenting in different periods of growth of the child. And I have identified 4 periods. You can identify many periods, but here we have identified 4 periods. The period 1 is infancy. And for our purposes, we say anytime from birth or before birth and age 2 to 3. Then we have period of childhood, which we say is from age 3 to about age 10. And then we identify the period that we call it pre-youth or early adolescence, or junior youth or early adolescence, and that is 11 to 15. And then we identify the 4th stage, which is senior youth, and the senior youth is between 16 and 20. These are the stages and years that I feel the parents have the greatest impact on their children. So we begin today by talking about infancy and to see what are the main needs of children during that period of life. Now, when we talk about these developments, we take into consideration several needs that all children have. All children at any time in their lives, they have biological needs. Biological, I mean needs related to their physical growth, their healthy body. They have psychological needs, and psychological refers to 2 things. It refers to their mental, intellectual development, and it refers to their emotional development. Now, and the 3rd thing that the children need is in respect to their spiritual needs. Spiritual needs. And the spiritual needs is much more complex and is not usually understood well. So, the first thing that we want to do right now, to talk about each of these developments briefly, to see how they are defined and how in each society and culture and parents they go about helping their children. Okay? The easiest one are the biological needs. Biological needs are very easy. Everybody knows that children need food and nourishment and physical stimulation and physical holding and physical touch when they are growing up. It's not enough just to look after the food and nourishment of children. It's very important that children should have very good, balanced food. As you know, the concept of what is good food has changed. Until about a year or 2 years ago, for example, in the United States and many European countries, and probably in Japan, I don't know about Japan, the concept of the good food was that children should have a lot of protein and some sweets and some fat, okay? And proteins were put on the top. Now, we are realizing that proteins, a lot of protein is not good, especially animal proteins. Proteins that are in meat is not good. Okay, we realize now. We realize now that the healthiest foods for children and for adults are foods that are found in nature. Grains, nuts, fruits, those are the things that grow in the nature. We realize that those are the best food for growth. Also, the protein that is very good is related to fish. Fish is an excellent protein. When it comes to meat, you have to be very careful because not all meat is healthy, especially it's come from England. And unfortunately, the rest of Europe also has it. They just have covered it up. And chicken is a little bit better, but it is if it is clean, because chicken can be very dirty, like E. coli, for example, that right now in Japan they are struggling with. Usually you find it in chicken that is not clean. So the animal meat, there is a lot of problem with it. And the problem with animal meat is that it's mixed with a lot of animal fat, which is not good for you at all. Okay? So the concept of what you eat and what is good for children is changing. I know, for example, in my family, my parents thought that a healthy child is a really plump, heavy child. Okay, they thought that the more heavy the child is, and the cheeks are big, and you can go and say, "Oh, this is nice child," and you know that's a healthy child. And if the child was skinny, they thought it is not very healthy. Okay, now we realize that no, that's not a good idea to have fat children, because usually fat children become fat adults. You see, that's the problem. So it is a very important area that we as parents, when we raise our children, we have to know. For example, Hossain is going to get married next week, and next year is going to have his first child. So don't make your child very plump, okay? Always we have to learn from nature. Nature, you know what is definition of nature? Nature is the command of Creator in the material world. In other words, the Creator says, we are going to create the nature in this way, and it is this way. Okay? Because everything that we have in life, there has a creator. Somebody built this table. And the person who built this table is the creator of the table. And this creator said, all tables are going to have 4 legs, or a big, wide legs, so that the table can stand very steady. This is a law that the creator puts in creating this table. Okay? And we call that creator carpenter. Okay? Now, the world of existence, everything that exists, the trees and the oceans and the mountains and human beings and everything that is there, we all have a nature, which means that there is a creator who said, human beings should be this way. Butterflies should be that way. Apple trees should be that way. Okay? So everything has a law that the creator puts in it. Okay? So human nature, in the nature, therefore we see signs of what the creator thought is the best thing for our food or eating at the beginning of our life. And what is the best thing? Is the milk. Mother's milk. It was the creator who said, okay, we create in human body, in the body of mothers, a situation that would create milk when the child comes to this world, so that this child can eat that milk and grow healthy. So the healthiest food for the child at the beginning of life is the mother's milk. Now it is interesting that this child, in addition to food, which is this milk, which has certain amount of protein, certain amount of carbohydrates, certain amount of fat, certain vitamins, certain immune materials that comes from the mother to the milk to the child. In addition to these, children need something else to grow healthy, and that is touch. Children need to be touched. At the beginning of their lives especially, they need touching. They need close connection with other human beings. And the healthiest connection is with mother, because they were in the body of that mother. They are very familiar with that mother. They are familiar with the smell of that mother, with the sounds of the heart of that mother. And then when begin to drink that milk, it is a total touch, because the child drinks from the breast of the mother. And therefore a connection takes place, which is extremely important in psychological development of child. Not only in the physical development of the child, but in the psychological development of the child. We have seen that children who don't have that connection with body of other human beings, they become psychologically very, very sick, and even they become biologically very, very sick, and many of them die. That's why the children who are in orphanages, they die very often. The death rate in orphanages is very high. The reason is that these children don't have enough human contact Children need stimulation with other human being, contact with other human being. They need to be touched. They need to be carried. They need to be moved around. They need to be taken care of in the arms of the parents. And when that doesn't happen, the child becomes not only physically unhealthy, but emotionally very unhealthy. And that is one of the important issues that mothers and fathers should know. And both mothers and fathers should learn how to establish that close contact with the child in the earliest days of life of that child. Okay? In many cultures, men are afraid of little babies. They don't know what to do with the child. Oh, don't give it to me. I don't know what to do with this child, okay? And you give the child, and they hold the child with stiff arms, and the child starts crying. And they say, okay, you take him, okay, and give it back to the mothers. Because these fathers haven't learned to be comfortable with the child. The more relaxed you are with the child, the more calm you are with the child, the more relaxed the child becomes. The more tense you are with the child, the more tense the child becomes. Usually the firstborn children are raised by parents who are very anxious. The parents don't know what to do. They try to do everything good for the child. And they are so nervous about this child, giving bath to the child. They hold the arm of the child in such a way that the whole hand goes blue. Okay? Because the child cries because, of course, it hurts. Okay? But the mother does it or father does it because they don't know what to do. You see, they don't feel relaxed. So it's very important to learn to touch. In many ways, when children are touched in early times of their lives, then when they are adults and get married, they don't have difficulty to touch their husbands and wives. But if they don't learn that, when they grow older, they have difficulty in touching their husbands or their wives, because it becomes so strange to them, you see. So this is very important in psychological development of the child, that you begin to give children touching. Now, children need also other stimulations. You see, we have 5 senses, right? 5 senses. Sense of touch, sense of smell, which comes automatically, but that means that from the earliest stages of life, we need to make the environment of child to smell good. You know, perfumes, very little touch of perfume, not enormous perfume that makes everybody sneeze, you see. Just a little touch, but it's a cleanliness, the cleanliness that is so important for the smell, okay? So that the child becomes familiar with the smell, good smell, the smell of cleanliness. Then the children need to taste. The mother's milk is a good taste. The taste that you give in children is very important. Many of the bottled food that is prepared, unfortunately, has a lot of sugar. So these children from infancy develop this taste for sugar, which is very bad for them, because too much sugar is not good, you see. So too sweet of things at the earliest stages of life, we have to be careful. Everything has to be in moderation. Okay, this is the other aspect of it. So then you move on, but there is another stimulation that is needed, and that is the stimulation of sound and sight. The environment of the child needs to have a very exciting environment. There has to be color. There has to be variety. There has to be movement, so that the child starts following things and seeing things, and the nervous system of the child develops and so forth. And then the sounds, what child hears is extremely important. They have done a lot of research about what children hear. Whatever children hear, they register. For example, there was a research that they found. There was a professor in some university, and when his children were growing up, he spoke to them and read to them from classical Greek stories and poetry and philosophy and so forth. These children were 1 month old, 2 months old, 3 months old, 1 year old, 2 year old, 3 year old. Greek. They lived in the United States, okay? And then the children went to school and everything was in English and nothing. Years later, when they were adults and decided to learn Greek because their parents were Greek or father was Greek, they suddenly knew these big words in Greek that they never heard. Of course they had heard it. They heard it in childhood. They heard it when they were infants. It registers and then has to be brought back to memory. So what the children learn here is extremely important. Extremely important. Okay? And here is two things are very important. One, things that children shouldn't hear, and the other one, things that children should hear. Okay? Children should not hear parents fighting at that early stage. Don't think that your 2-month-old baby, if you start fighting with each other, wouldn't register it. Children would register. Children put their parents watching this movie that, good guys are killing bad guys and bad guys are killing good guys. And the sound of guns and weapons and everything goes on. And you think that the 2-month-old baby doesn't register those sounds? Registers. They're all there. Okay? So it's very essential that what the children hear are the best music, a chanting and singing of parents, prayers that you sing, words that are words of wisdom, words of spirituality, words of knowledge. These are the kind of things that children need to hear. And they have impact on them. Okay? So these are the issues related to biological and psychological development of children. But psychological development is far more. It's not only that. Psychologically, the most important thing that a child during infancy, a person during the infancy has to learn is what? What do you think is the most important thing that, from a psychological perspective, that a child has to learn when is 2 months old, 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old?
Sense of security.
Love.
Sense of security, love, trust. All of them are the same, okay? Children have to learn to trust their world. That's the most important thing. How do you learn to trust? You learn to trust through your relationship with the parents. So when a child has lost his parents or has been abandoned by the parents, or one parent dies and the child goes from one parent to another parent, the child doesn't develop that necessary capacity of trust. Okay? Trusting yourself and trusting others. Okay? Trust. So the child has to develop capacity of trust. To trust. Okay? It is essential. Now, how do you develop trust as children? How do we develop trust? We develop trust by being able to trust our parents and adults. And we develop trust with our parents by seeing that what they do with us makes sense and is regular and is not unexpected. One day, a child wouldn't develop trust if one day this person who he calls father comes and says, oh, you're beautiful, you're my little baby. And another day, this little baby say, daddy, daddy, and so don't bother me, I'm busy. So the child suddenly says, what happened? I thought that this man loved me. And now he says, don't bother me, I'm busy. So the child begins to develop two ideas about the father. So that the trust starts diminishing. And the child begins to feel then unloved. The child begins to feel insecure. The child begins to feel unsure. So it is so important that environment that we create for children at that early stage is a very trusting environment. Trust means an ability to have confidence that things that you don't know and people that you don't have control over are going to do the right thing for you. Okay? That's trust. Now, the way I define trust, there is another word that you can put in place of trust. What is that?
Confidence.
Faith.
Confidence.
Faith.
It's faith. It's faith. Trust is necessary for development of faith. The reason that so many people don't have faith because people didn't develop that psychological foundation of trust. So there is a close relationship between psychological condition of trust and a spiritual condition of faith. So the more we raise our children in a trusting environment, the more we help them to develop the capacity of faith. What means faith? Faith means the capacity, the assurance, the certainty that the creator that created this world knew what he was doing. He did everything out of his love. And whatever happens is ultimately good for us. Okay? Now that capacity, majority of people no longer have. Most people don't have faith. And to a very large degree, that's because most people have lost their trust. They have lost their trust in their parents, in their societies, in their leaders, in themselves, in everything. But this is something more important. We will talk about it later. So at the psychological level, when we say infants need to develop trust, it means that the infants need love, infants need an environment that is secure, children need an environment that is predictable, in an environment that is not violent, an environment that is not harsh, an environment that is truthful. These are necessary in order to develop trust. Okay? So, and then we want to understand what is spiritual development. Now, the issue of spiritual development requires a little bit of explanation first. Okay? Spiritual development is not the same as psychological development. It is different from psychological development. Now, to understand the spiritual development, we have to look at the human nature. Okay? We have to see what does it mean to be a human being. Okay? Now, one way of understanding what does it mean to be a human being is to think about people when they die. How many of you in this room have been with somebody when that person died? Anybody in this room? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's good. 6 out of 16. Okay? Now I tell you something when people die, okay? One of the most important and valuable and precious experiences of my life has been working with people who were dying, because I'm a physician, okay? So for many years, I counseled psychological counseling, because I'm a psychiatrist also, for people who were dying, okay? And I would be with them people, individuals who were dying.
Who were dying?
Dying.
Dying.
Dying. Yes, people who were dying. And I dealt with these people. I talked with them, went to their homes, went to their families, stayed with them for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. And usually I was sitting on their bed when they died. Okay? And what happens is that you're talking with somebody and you say, how are you today? What is happening? And this and that. And then that person becomes weaker and weaker and cannot answer to you. But you go and sit with them and talk to them, even though they cannot answer to you. And then they go into a coma and they cannot at all respond, but still you are with them and you pay attention to them and so forth. And you know that you're communicating with that person. And then they take their final breath. And as soon as they take their final breath, you know that they're not there anymore. And you leave. Even though the body is there, even though nothing has changed as far as the body is concerned, you know that that person is not there any longer. Okay? Why? Because this is the nature of human reality. Life happens when consciousness, you know what are the other names for consciousness? What are the other names for consciousness?
Awareness.
Awareness, okay. What else? Soul. Soul means consciousness. Another word for it?
Spirit.
Spirit means consciousness. Another word for it?
Life.
No.
Faith.
No. psyche. Psyche. Okay? All of these, and even the word heart. Heart.
Mind as well.
And in a way you can use mind, but mind is the power of the consciousness, okay? But you can put even the word mind the way that is used by many people. All of these words, they are different statements, expressions of the same reality, okay? And that reality means something that you describe yourself. Today I asked you, I said, tell me about yourself. And all of you said, I, and then something else. That I describes your consciousness, your soul, your spirit, your psyche, your heart, your mind. That's what you were talking about. That's I.
Being.
When you,
Your being.
your I, your being if you want. But being is a more general. I'm talking about consciousness or soul or spirit or psyche. Because these things don't have physical dimension. Consciousness is not a physical thing. You cannot go to market and say, give me 2 kilos of consciousness or 2 liters of consciousness, please. You can't buy consciousness. You cannot go and say, may I have a gallon of soul? You can't. You can measure soul like that, okay?
Don't say I want some spirit. They
And
might give something
you cannot go and give me 2 meters of spirit, okay? You can't do that.
2 bottles.
Or 2 bottles of spirit you can get, yes. But this is a different kind of spirit, okay? All right.
Sprite.
Yes. So these things have a quality in their own that they don't have material dimension. Okay? They are non-material in their nature. Consciousness, soul, spirit, psyche, heart, mind, they are non-material. Okay? So that's one part of human nature. You all know. You all are conscious, right? You all therefore have a soul. You all therefore have a spirit. You all therefore have a heart. You have a mind. You have a psyche. Okay? That's one part of you. But the other part of you is the form that you are, and you all have marvelous forms. Okay? This is your body. Now your body, you describe it, you say, I am tall, I am short, I'm skinny, I'm not skinny, I am black, I am white, I am this way or that way. You describe your physical being in those terms. Okay? When you describe your consciousness, you say, I am knowledgeable, I'm loving, I'm truthful, I'm kind, I'm honest. That's the way you describe your consciousness. You don't say, my body is honest. You see, your consciousness is body. You don't say, my body is very knowledgeable and wise. No. It is your consciousness that is very wise. And so, okay? Your spirit and so on. Now, there are these 2 expressions of reality. Reality is one, but it has 2 expressions. You understand this? This is very important. Reality is one, but has 2 expressions. One expression is in the form of consciousness or soul, which is non-material or spiritual, non-physical, and the other one is material or physical. Okay? Now, when consciousness and matter come together, you have life. So life happens when consciousness or soul, consciousness and matter come together in a condition of unity. That's what happens at the moment of conception. Okay? You know what's conception? You know what is conception?
Inception.
Conception. Tell her what is conception. Conception. Okay? At the moment of conception, what happens is a matter, which is the sperm and ovum of mother and father and mother coming together, creating an egg. As soon as that happens, is like creating a mirror, and the sun, which is the consciousness, shines in it. And when that happens, you have life. Death is when consciousness and matter are separated from each other. So life happens when consciousness and matter come together, and death happens when consciousness and matter go away from each other. Okay? Now, when consciousness and matter come together and create life, okay? Now, this life has certain powers. What are the characteristics and powers of life?
Knowledge, love, and will.
What's that?
Knowledge, love, and will.
No, first something more, start from something much more specific. Development, growth, right? Life, therefore, gives you growth. You have to grow. Okay? Growth. Growth is more than movement. Growth means development and evolving, which one part of it is movement. But another part of it is movement to a higher level and becoming more expanded and profound, okay? So anything that is alive has to grow.
Excuse me, can we say that the growth is toward a purpose?
Well, growth could be towards a purpose or could be unhealthy, and then it's not towards a purpose, depending on the kind of a growth that you have, okay? So one aspect of the life is growth. Now, what is another aspect of life? What is another aspect of life?
Learning.
All of us grow. Learning is one growth, is intellectual growth, right? When we talk about growth, we are talking about intellectual growth, we are talking about emotional growth, we are talking about social growth, and we are talking about the spiritual growth, okay? We are talking about all aspects of growth.
Including physical.
Physical, yes. Physical growth, you are absolutely right. Physical growth. These are all aspects of growth. Now there is something else about growth. What is that? About life. And related to growth. Yeah. Well, love is a force that you need it.
Awareness.
Awareness is life. When we say life, we mean awareness. You cannot be alive and not be aware. This is nice. You see, we said we rain at night and we have sunshine during the day.
Bring forth the fruit.
Yeah, growth, this is the ultimate objective of the growth, is to bring forth some fruits. But we all grow in a unique manner, right? In other words, if you have two children, they don't grow the same. They are the same family, the same parents, but they're different. You have 6 children, they're 6 times difference. Okay? Everybody grows in a unique manner. Okay? We call this creativity. Creativity doesn't mean artistic creativity. Creativity means that every individual human being is unique. And every individual human being grows in a unique way. And this is called creativity. In other words, every one of us have grown in a creative way, and we have become unique individuals. So when you want to help your children to grow, first of all, when you want to help your children have a good life, you have to make sure that they grow physically, they grow intellectually, they grow emotionally, they grow socially, they grow morally and ethically, they grow in all of those areas. In order to grow, you need order. You need regulations, you need laws. You cannot grow wild. Okay? So order is necessary, discipline is necessary. So a home that is not orderly, the child doesn't grow well. Okay? A home that doesn't have regulations and laws, then the home becomes full of chaos. And when the home becomes full of chaos, growth becomes wild. So suddenly you see children who are growing wild, growing aggressive, growing barbaric, growing violent. They lie, they steal, they fight, they argue. It means that these children haven't grown in an environment that has had healthy regulations, healthy order. For growth, you need order. Now, the problem is that most societies know about this. And most parents know that for children to grow, you have to have order. But these parents and these societies sometimes become too orderly, become very rigid. They become very strict. They say, this is it and no other way. You do that way and nothing else. If you don't do this way, you're not a good German, or a good Japanese person, or a good Persian person, or a good whatever. So people have this tendency to become too rigid in respect to order. Order always has to be accompanied with something else. You see, order is good for growth. But then you have to have creativity. Creativity means the ability to be free, to experiment, to do new things, to have new ideas, to say no to your parents, and still everything would be okay. So order requires regulations. Creativity requires freedom. And a good parent or a good family is a family that can create both of them together. That you have order on the one hand and you have freedom on the other hand. And this is the most difficult thing to do. Right now, majority of societies in the world either have too much order and too little freedom, so the children grow up in a very authoritarian, rigid families, and they are not, therefore those children don't grow to be creative. They're afraid to think in a new way. They're afraid to make decisions in a new way. They change their minds all the time. They don't know what to do. They don't know what is right. They don't know what is wrong, because what the parents say is right, they don't like. What the society says is right, parents don't like. And they find themselves caught in a situation. That kind of a society you find in Europe, many European societies. You find it in Japan. You find it in Persia. You find it in China. You find it in many countries around the world. And then the other side of it are families and societies that are without order and total freedom. Total freedom is dangerous. Total freedom is very dangerous. The same way that the total order is dangerous, total freedom is dangerous. Order without freedom suffocates. You know what suffocates? Suffocates. It makes you unable to grow. And freedom without order doesn't allow you to grow in a healthy way. You grow in a wild way. You become barbaric, you become wild. The best example of it are the children, many children in North America. North America is a very free society. Many European societies are very free societies. Children who grow in countries that there are no social organization, many African societies, suffer from the same thing. There is no supervision, there is no order. So these children suffer from total lack of order, and they grow up to become wild. Okay? The children who grow in very orderly homes without freedom, they become violent, become angry. They become very angry. And then they decide to do things that breaks the laws of the society. They go and steal things, or they lie, or they beat up other children. In schools you have a lot of violence. Don't you have that in many countries? You do, okay? These are because the society is too controlling. So children try to get out of that control. Then when the societies that are too free, the opposite happens. But both, the result is that both children who are raised in very rigid societies and families, and children who are raised in very permissive families and societies, both children become angry and violent in the end, become destructive. They don't become creative. Okay? So the whole idea of life is that one part of it is growth and the other part of it is creativity. You have to create situation for the children. That on the one hand, they have order, and on the other hand, they have freedom to move within that order. Okay? And this is very, very important. And in the world today, either you have one or you have the other. So what we have talked so far is talking about the nature of human life, which is coming together of consciousness and matter, or soul and body. And the outcome of this coming together, the unity of the soul and the body, is a life that is characterized by two things under healthy conditions, by growth and by creativity. Now, we have reached so far, but we have to continue, but not tonight. We will continue tomorrow to talk about other aspects of growth. Now we would have questions and discussion for a while. Okay.
You know, death, as you define the soul, I heard that death is defined sometimes, for instance, 100 years ago, when the heart was not beating.
Yes.
Now, medically, they define it as the, I don't know, brain waves or things like that.
That's right.
So, what, for instance, if you see somebody who is unconscious, maybe he's alive, you know.
That's right. Yes.
Or his heart may not be beating.
That's right. What is the point?
Well, how do we define death?
All right. So this is the technical question. This is a technical question. How we define death. As our knowledge of life increases and our medical knowledge increases, we become better in deciding what exactly, when exactly death takes place. But that doesn't change the reality that we all die. Okay? Doesn't matter how careful you become about explanation of death. The ultimate thing is that there comes a time that you die. Whether, in the past they thought that it comes a time that your heart doesn't beat. Other times they said put a mirror in front of the nose of the person to see whether he's breathing or not, and if not, they put the guy in the coffin. Poor guy, probably 5 minutes later he wakes up, but it's too late. Okay. And now,
scientific decision.
Yeah, it is scientific, and as our science increases, we become better for it. But that's a technical issue. Okay. The issue that I was talking about was trying to describe the mystery of life. And mystery of life is that it is unity between consciousness and soul, consciousness and matter, body and soul. That's what I was trying to say. Okay.
The NDE, is it that it's a temporary death, or is it that it's not really death?
What do you mean?
NDE.
Near-death experience. Now, again, we have a technical question. These are not related to the parenting, okay? But I answer it, even though it's not related to the parenting. The question is, near-death experience, is it death or
Temporary.
or is temporary?
Is it temporary death or not death at all?
No, it's not death.
It's not death.
No, death is irreversible. When you die, you're dead. Okay? So anything else, doesn't matter you call it, is not death. Okay? It is close to death. Okay, that's something.
If they see the tunnel, it's okay.
They can see the tunnel, they can go the other side of tunnel, but if they come back, they were not dead. They were close to death. Okay? And all of these explanations that are given, that I was dead and so forth, exactly is related to the first question, because we don't exactly understand the time of death yet. But these near-death experiences, of course, are important. But again, is a technical issue related to other issues, not related to parenting.
it's technical. You say life is consciousness and matter. Is there a commonality? Is life for me? Is every life is totally different? But is every matter totally different and every consciousness totally different?
No.
Or is there some commonalities in matter, or
Well,
some commonalities in consciousness?
The good question. The question is, life is a unity of matter and consciousness, and people are different. The people are unique, and you are asking which one is unique, the body or the consciousness? It's both. All of us have certain genetic endowments that are different. Your genes are different from yours and from every one of us. She has her own unique genes. He has his own unique genes. You have your own unique genes. So from a genetic perspective, which is the material perspective, we are all unique. Also from our consciousness perspective, and tomorrow I will describe that, we are all unique also. So we are unique both in respect to our physical dimension and in respect to our spiritual dimension. Every human being is unique. Everything that is in the world of creation is unique. Why? Because God is one. God is one, everybody else is one. Everything is one. Okay? So the uniqueness is in every respect.
I wanted to this topic of order.
Yes.
Just a comment and observation. Societies that have been homogeneous
Yes.
and have stayed contained, there has been a sense of order dictated by the society, whether it was the village in Africa or
Yes.
the country in Asia. As these societies have begun to mingle and
Yes.
with other homogeneous and heterogeneous,
They have become disordered.
they have become disordered, and it's like a sense of trying to figure out where these teenagers are, or these kids are today.
That's right.
And it's also similar to multicultural marriages.
That's right. That's right. But you see, the issue of order that you raised is very important. Homogeneous societies could be a village or an island or a country like Japan or many places. They are homogeneous. Even China, to a very large degree, tries to be homogeneous. They establish a certain order. Usually, in a homogeneous society, order becomes very rigid. Okay? Very rigid. And therefore, the society loses its capacity to become truly creative. Okay? And only when the society has a contact with outside world and new ideas come in, that the society begin to gradually suddenly show its enormous capacity. But it is a process of change, and that process of change usually creates quite a bit of disorder in the society. You move from order to disorder to a higher level of order. So, for example, Africa right now is going through an enormous degree of disorder. During the Second World War, an enormous disorder took place and new ideas were introduced in different parts of the world, and the world began to change dramatically. You see? Now, with the revolution in information technology, with the radio and television and internet and all of these things, no society no longer can be homogeneous. And with traveling of people all around the world, people are going to mingle. And people from different culture are going to another culture, and they are going to fall in love with people who are from other cultures, and they are going to get married, and they are going to have interracial marriages, and all of these things are going to happen. And so therefore, the whole world is moving towards a higher level of order. And in the process is experiencing a lot of disorder, which is a part of the process. It's called chaos. This is the theory of chaos. Theory of chaos means that as you move from one level to the next level, don't be surprised that things become disorderly. When your children move from being 8 and 9 years old to teenagers, 13, 14, 15, the teenagers, they are going through a period of chaos, okay? Their hormones changes, their emotions changes, their feelings and thoughts changes, so they become chaotic. They become very confused, they become very difficult. And it is so important for the parents not to panic, not to get frightened, not to think, oh my God, things are going wrong. No, no, no. There is a certain degree of chaos, of disorder, necessary to move, in order to move from childhood to adulthood. And adolescence is that age of chaos. Okay? We will talk about it when later we talk about adolescence. But you shouldn't be afraid of this change and stop the process of change. We shouldn't do that. Okay? Yes.
It was, I understand that children, they need to be touched and hugged and
Yes.
carried.
Yes.
But we are experiencing that sometimes it might be too much. Isn't that
That's right. The question of touch and carrying and all of those things in life, everything in life, has to follow the laws of moderation. Too much of anything or too little of anything is not good, is harmful. Too much food, good food, is not good. Too much vitamins is a poison. Too much touching is not good. Too little is not good. The law is the law of moderation. Moderation is a sign of maturity. A mature parent would know how to do it, and also there is a time. I was talking about infants needing a lot of touch. Infants, when the infants grow and become older, you decrease that touch. When your children are adolescents, you are very careful about the touch. You don't touch a lot because the different dynamics are happening in these children about their bodies and their sexuality and all of those things. So you have to use wisdom, and you have to know when something is required and do it, and when you have to not do it. And I was talking about infancy, and I said in infancy children need a lot of touch and holding and so forth. During childhood the children need a lot of hugging, but also a lot of freedom. During adolescence, the children have to be respected and do as they ask, not to just do it as you want. These are the important things you have to keep in mind. So it goes step by step.
even infancy, it might be too much? Is that right?
Well, I said you have to, as an adult, you have to judge, and you have to have a judgment. Yes, if you keep your child all the time in your arms, then the child begins to cry. Because the child says, leave me alone. For God's sake. Okay? That's the way the child tells you something. You say, leave me alone. Okay? Too much. All right.
You said that the base growth for children is to have a balance, or to harmonize order and creativity, which is freedom. In a family, I feel that the problem is one is much more oriented to order, the other one is
I know.
freedom.
Yeah.
Is it a good combination, or should it be that both should harmonize?
What do you think?
I think it doesn't work so bad for us, but better.
I think that actually, when I am alone, the image of freedom he sees in me,
Yeah.
I've got much more order in it, actually,
Yes.
because it's not actually, you can't live with 6 kids.
And not to have order, yes.
You know, there
Yes.
is an order, but it's not the same order as the one he sees.
That's right.
And when he's alone
Yes.
with the 6 kids, he gets some kind of creativity in it too.
Yeah, exactly. His order is a masculine order.
Yeah.
Your order is a feminine order. And that's one of the challenges of humanity today. Because men and women have been raised so differently, and the concepts have been so differently. We will talk about it. So usually fathers and mothers have different idea of how much order, how much freedom, what kind of order, what kind of a freedom. This is common. We see in many families. The important thing is to create unity.
Yeah, but in that case...
Just a minute. Just a minute. Okay. Now, what do you think is the most important aspect of unity?
Peace.
No. Peace is the outcome.
Yes.
Outcome of unity. Respect of what about each other?
Personality.
Yeah. The most important thing about unity is the agreement that you are diverse, that you are different, and respecting each other's diversity, and instead of fighting about it, is to understand, to try to understand each other. And therefore you bring diversity into the relationship with the children. But you are united. So the children know that when they are with their French-speaking dad, they speak French. And when they are with their Norwegian-speaking mom, they speak Norwegian. It's very diverse, but it's very united. The outcome is that they speak 2 different languages. That's not bad. That's good. That's diverse. But if they say, no, we are going to either speak this language or that language, then the children, that's fine also, but the child learns one language rather than both languages. You see? As long as you agree what you do, diversity is not bad. As long as diversity is within the parameters of being reasonable and healthy and all of those things. Okay? Yes?
The problem is it's very often a cause of conflict.
Well, that we have to talk later. When it's something called conflict, it means that we have to discuss it. Well, adolescent, we are talking about infancy.
Oh, I see.
All right. We are talking about infancy. So, we stop here. We come tomorrow morning at 9:15 there and 10 o'clock here.
I was hoping that during this discussion, during these 9 days, that somehow you will incorporate these multicultural marriages that the Baha'i Faith is encouraging and bringing together, but it's beyond 2 languages.
All right.
Beyond 2 sets of values and cultures, and there's so much there, and people coming together and maintaining their identities yet being united.
I hope that we will have the time to do that. Usually we talk about that when we have talked about marriages. So if we had time, we will talk about multicultural marriages. Okay? Families. Yes. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.